The personal protective equipment industry has kept millions of people safe over the past year. But the companies which dominate the PPE industry have a long track record of union busting and forced labour. Workers in a dozen countries have powered Melbourne-based multinational PPE company Ansell to a record profit during the pandemic. These essential workers are organising for their rights and they need our solidarity. Andy Hall has worked for many years with migrant workers in glove factories in Malaysia and elsewhere.
Ansell has serious indicators of forced labour, both in its direct, wholly owned factories in Malaysia, also in its partly owned factories, and also in its massive supply chain. It's one of the biggest buyers of gloves in Malaysia. We see workers in this industry paying up to $5,000 for their jobs, which leaves them in serious debt bondage at high risk of forced labour. We see excessive overtime both in Ansell's factories and also in their supply chain of up to 150 hours per month on top of a 48-hour week. We see appalling accommodation conditions where up to 60 or 70 people may be staying in one room with limited toilet and bathing facilities. And we see really dangerous work conditions where industrial accidents are frequently occurring. Ansell has a lot of leverage as one of the biggest buyers of gloves from Malaysia to really ensure remediation of these forced labour indicators, to ensure that workers are paid back the fees, that they are working decent hours, earning a living wage, and also being compensated properly for accidents. We haven't seen this. We've seen Ansell making massive profits from the COVID pandemic. We've seen those workers who are providing the gloves at high risk of contracting COVID, and in some cases the workers have also died. Ansell needs to do more, it should do more, and it shouldn't be making profits at the expense of exploitable, high-risk migrant workers.
In 2020, the largest outbreak of COVID in Malaysia was among low-paid migrant workers in factories operated by Top Glove, a major supplier to Ansell. In March 2021, US Customs and Border Protection banned shipments from Top Glove due to evidence of modern slavery in their supply chain. Ansell supplier, Brightway, has been raided and charged with allegations of modern slavery. Canadian Customs are investigating Hartaliga, another company supplying Ansell, over allegations of modern slavery. Ansell has a long track record of promising to fix this gross exploitation in its supply chain, but the problems continue. Effective unions are crucial in turning this situation around. However, in 2013, Ansell went on a union busting drive at its factories in Brazil, Malaysia and Sri Lanka. 8 years later, unionists in Sri Lanka are still fighting for justice. Janaka Rohita is one of the leaders of the union inside the Ansell factory in Sri Lanka.
My name is Janaka. I joined Ansell Lanka in 1991 as a maintenance worker. From then on I worked there for 22 years until I lost my job. Ansell Lanka workers were the first to form a trade union in the free trade zone, which bosses planned to run without unions. In 1994 we had to go on strike to raise our conditions. We were able to win a number of gains, such as a 20% pay rise as well as 7 days of paid leave, because we organised and worked as trade unions. In 2013, we had to fight against Ansell again as they attempted to raise production targets, cut incentives and the use of labour hire. Meanwhile, a group of thugs attacked the president of our union. Here Ansell provoked us to go on strike. After months on strike, Ansell sacked more than 300 permanent workers. At this point international trade unions stepped up to support us. Especially Australian unions showed their solidarity by holding protests in front of the Ansell headquarters. In 2016, due to this tremendous pressure from Australian unions, Ansell entered to a memorandum of understanding with our union. Accordingly, the company started rehiring many workers. But unfortunately the 11 union leaders who organised and led the struggle against this repression are still laid off after 7 years. Therefore, we comradely request you to rejoin us to put pressure on the Ansell management to reinstate or compensate these 11 trade union leaders.
Australian unions have written to Ansell about the gross exploitation in their supply chain and asking for justice for the 11 sacked union leaders in Sri Lanka. This includes the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation, the Electrical Trade Union, Victorian Trades Hall Council, the Rail, Tram and Bus Union, and many others. To keep organising and to link the Sri Lankan workers with workers in Malaysia and elsewhere, Australia Asia Worker Links launched a crowdfunder to pay for Zoom translation facilities. Please chip in if you can. We'll be stepping up our solidarity activity in coming months with an online public meeting and a protest as soon as COVID conditions allow. We need volunteers to help with research and organising solidarity activities. Get in touch with the Ansell Solidarity campaign via your union or through the Australian Asia Worker Links Facebook page. Workers in Ansell supply lines have helped keep us safe. When they ask for our support, our answer has to be solidarity. Together, workers change the world.